Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Today we have a new set of crazy stories about crazy people for you to enjoy. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. New hire misses most of the first 3 weeks of work, then uses me as a reference. Let's call her Karen, just because it fits. She came in and applied for a job. When I looked at her resume and application, I realized she knew some of my old neighborhood friends and schoolmates. She interviewed well, so I gave her a job, told her to be in Monday at 9 a.m. Monday morning, she's not in. She no calls, no shows. Tuesday, no call, no show. I'd now written her off. Wednesday, she shows up about noon, claims she was in her basement Sunday night and her brother was working out, and he accidentally knocked her out during his intense workout. She claimed her doctor told her she had a concussion and she should stay home for a couple days. She had no doctor's note, no marks on her head, but thinking her story was so off the wall it could almost be true, I let her come to work the next day. She worked Thursday and Friday. We paid at the end of every week and I gave her a check Friday. I also did not deduct the days she'd missed. She came to me and asked about the full paycheck. I told her we were a family business and realized people had lives outside of work. We tried to make sure people knew they were appreciated and tried to take care of our people. She teared up and thanked me and said we could count on her. She worked the full next week, did okay. She seemed to fit in. Seemed. The third week she showed up Monday, but Tuesday was another no call, no show. We did not hear from her for over 2 weeks. When she finally showed up, her story was the stuff of legends. She claimed her husband had forged divorce papers a couple years previous. Thinking she was divorced, she moved back into her parents' house. She claimed her ex-husband was at her parents' house when she got home the last night she worked. He told her he made up the divorce and the paperwork was phony, so they were still married and he wanted to get back together. She claimed she refused and he kidnapped her. She said it took her until a couple of days ago to get away from him. She wanted to come into work the next day. She did not call the police and he was not arrested. There was nothing in the papers or on the news about any of this. She wasn't hurt, thank God. She asked if I believed her. I did not, but I told her that I really needed someone I could count on coming in reliably every day. I gave her a paycheck for 1 week. She had worked 1 day and told her I wished her good luck. I'd already replaced her and her replacement was one of the best employees we ever had. Here's the malicious compliance. The next month, I come into a phone message that someone from XXX company had called for a reference for Karen. As my secretary is handing me the message, she's laughing at the look on my face. I asked if she was kidding. She said she was not. She said she got a call from a man saying he was the owner of a company in the area and asked about Karen. Then my secretary asked if she could listen in on the call. She was a pistol. She then goes and gets my partner and tells him I'm going to call and give Karen a reference. Now he's in my office laughing too. I call the guy and we make some small talk. I tell him what we do and he tells me what he wants Karen to do for him. I tactfully avoided answering any of his questions about Karen directly. I think he was beginning to suspect something. Remember, folks, employers can get in a ton of trouble for bad references. He finally asked my opinion of Karen, and what I said was, if you can get Karen to work for you, you will be very lucky. He heard what I said and how I said it. He repeated that back to me exactly as I said it. All my words were the right ones. It was my tone and intonation that got my point across. He thanked me and hung up. Karen comes into the office a couple days later. She looks mad but's trying to be pleasant. She told me she's having trouble finding a job and mentioned she used me as a reference. She wanted to know if anyone from XXX company had called me. She knew they did. She told me she really wanted the job at XXX company. I told her I'd been called and that I told the guy he'd be lucky to get her to work for him. My secretary confirmed that's what I told him. She told him she was right next to me during the whole conversation. Karen smiled and thanked me and headed to the door. She said she wondered why she was having so much trouble getting a job. She asked if she could continue to use me for a reference, and I told her absolutely. I also told her I'd tell everyone the same thing, that any employer would be lucky if they can get you to work for them. She walked away, smiling, happy, and clueless. And our next story. Write me up for simple mistakes to get me fired? Prepare to get fired. Anyways, private security was my field up until a few years ago. When I say security, I don't mean mall cops, but high-end, armed, trained security. I spent a few years working a job in another city away from home, but the company went under, so I decided to move back home. I found a security job online. It was a simple entry level, basically sitting behind a computer. You were security for the building, but monitored security for other sites the company owned across 3 states, like small repair places, factories, places where they stored vehicles, etc. So I submitted my resume. The next day, a guy calls and sets up an interview. Awesome, because I needed to find work fast. Went to the interview, conducted by a woman I'll call Jane. She was the supervisor, and the guy I talked to was her boss. Jane immediately told me I was way overqualified, which I found strange, but okay. Interview went fine, and I left. A few hours later, she called and said I was hired and set up training days. Now, I won't go through that, just wanted to give background. So let's go to the good parts. She always gave me a cold shoulder. Her boss found out I have all the qualifications, licensing, and training to be armed, so he had me come in armed. Nothing fancy, handgun, 3 magazines, and handcuffs. She'd always make comments about how everyone should be armed, a few of my coworkers I wouldn't trust with a water gun, and she should decide who's armed. Just little comments to get under my skin. Then one day, it happened. I was working the front desk reception that day, and she sends me a message over Messenger telling me she needs to see me. I go back, she drags me to a side office with a write-up form. Apparently, when I added door access to visitor's badge, I added the door to the gym in the basement. A mistake, but not life-threatening. A week later, I didn't sign my timesheet. Another for not filling in a form correctly. All minor things everyone's done or did. The end came about 9 months into the job when I looked at the new timesheet. I was paired with a new officer who'd been there a month, only he was listed as shift supervisor. Confused, I took it to her second in command. I'll call him Bob, a great guy. He told me that he brought it up, that I had basically the experience and seniority to be promoted, and she basically told him to F off. It was her choice. Anyway, that got me mad, so I started planning my revenge. I don't normally do this, but I knew one more write-up and I would be fired no matter how minor the infraction. Good thing is, during the night shift, there's only 2 people and we can't see each other's computers, so I started thinking. I remembered about 4 months prior, her car broke down in the parking lot across the street. Instead of having it towed, Jane's father decided to fix it there. No big deal. Only during that time, Jane was bringing her husband back into the security office. This was a huge deal. The office took scanning at 3 doors and a keypad to enter. In the whole building, only the security staff and 1 cleaning guy had access. It was the HQ for the company, and not even the executives had access. From our computers, we could open any door, turn off any camera or alarm, and open any gate in any building that the company owned. So it was a big deal because we had the keys to the kingdom. That was a huge effing violation. So I hatched my plan. Under the excuse of having a smoke, I went out to the reception and copied the visitor's log from those days. I then went back in and accessed the video feeds. You can go back a year for all the video feeds. I took screenshots of her husband entering the doors and office, and the office itself had no camera, as well as with timestamps, him leaving, and the fact he never swiped in, which following someone into a door, even if they hold it open, you must scan your card. I logged onto my private email and sent it to another email knowing they don't log what you do on the computers. I got home and sent all the pics, the log copies, and everything not only to her boss, but his boss, whose job was investigating breaches and theft. I also included every dirty trick she pulled, playing favorites, etc. The fallout didn't take long. 2 days later, a Friday, I went in for an afternoon shift and Bob was at Jane's workstation. I looked confused and said Jane was suspended for a week that Monday. I had to come in and speak with her boss and boss's boss, but it would be paid for. Also, everyone was interviewed. It was great. Rumors were flying. I was laughing on the inside. Okay, interview day. I go in and they start questioning me. They knew I worked while she brought her husband in and asked me. I spilled everything after acting scared and getting assurances it would be confidential and I won't be punished. I didn't tell them I sent it, but they asked everyone. I left out some things in the email and added some things that weren't. I didn't want to be labeled as a snitch. It went on for an hour, and I left. Next day, an email's waiting. Jane was fired. Bob was in charge until a replacement was added. I had a long talk with Bob that day. Turns out Jane was scared of me because I was more qualified for her job than she was and knew I was her boss's golden boy. She was afraid, rightfully so it turned out, that I might take her job and admitted to him she wanted me gone. A fact he told them in his interview. Also that she didn't want to hire me, but her boss made her. Turns out her boss was aware of things and looking for an excuse to fire her, but it had to be big. Jane had been working at that department for 10 years. It was her first real job, and security was all she knew. They blacklisted her, which means unless a company was really desperate, she wouldn't get a security job anywhere in the state. Icing on the cake. I know you want to know. Yes, I was offered her job. No, I didn't take it. I told him that Bob deserved it more. He did, and that I would be happy being a shift supervisor, so that's what I stayed for the next 2 years until I left. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.